This is a 34-year-old gamer who spent his entire adult life alone in his room. One day, he is hit by a truck. In his final moments, his only regret in life is that he is dying as a virgin. But something feels wrong. Darkness is replaced with light. He opens his eyes and sees a strange man and an attractive woman. He wonders what the hell is going on when the man kisses him straight on the lips, but immediately shifts his attention to the plot developing before him. He refuses to let this opportunity slip. He reaches out to cop a feel, but after seeing his tiny arms, he gets it. His previous life has been left behind and has reincarnated as a baby. Their names are Paul and Zenith, his new parents. His name is Rudy, short for Rudius Grey Rat. As he gets accustomed to his new body, Rudy does not hold back. He fulfills all his desires of old, unwilling to die again with the same regrets. Lilia, who is a maid of the Grey Rat family, sees the demonic presence within him. She fears the perverted eyes that stare underneath her breasts. Zenith comforts Lilia, confident that a baby his age doesn't know any better, or so she thinks. At first, he thinks he is somewhere in the countryside of Europe, but after he sees Paul swing around a sword and Zenith heal him of his wounds, Rudy quickly realizes that he is reborn in a different world entirely. At a very young age, Rudy masters the language of his new world. He wastes no time studying the arts of magic, casting his first spell at the age of 2. Despite the use of incantations in this world, Rudy finds that he has a special gift and that he can cast spells without saying the words. Even though the new environment poses more distractions heard through the thin walls of his room, Rudy maintains his gamer personality, grinding those levels while staying cooped up in his room. In no time, Rudy is able to cast intermediate magic spells. As a student of magic herself, Zenith is ecstatic to find out that Rudy is a magical genius, and immediately finds him a tutor. Her name is Roxy. Rudy is pleasantly surprised that she is a cute loli. In their very first session, Rudy immediately sees that there is more to Roxy than meets the eye. Uninterested in the perverted eyes of a baby boy, Roxy is more surprised of her student's innate ability, jealous that he can cast spells without saying the words. Nevertheless, she decides to stay with the Grey Rats and train him. While practicing his earth magic in his room, he hears Paul and Zenith go at it again. He thinks it would be fun to see their reaction when he walks in on them and says, "Mommy, Daddy, what are you doing?" Leaving his room, Rudy is surprised to see Roxy taking notes on the plot development while developing her own plot. Satisfied by the plot-on-plot twist, Rudy calls it a night. The pair continue their lessons for months, and Rudy is able to cast intermediate magic without breaking a sweat. All the while, he remains a disciplined student, even paying close attention to the plot-filled history lessons through visual stimulation. Rudy shows his excitement to learn that there are spirits and demons in this world, to which Roxy replies that despite her looks, she is, in fact, a demon. She adds that demons come in all different forms, both good and bad. Her purple hair race are a peaceful kind called the Miggered. Then there are the supered, green hair with a red gem on their forehead, an infamous race of warriors who sided with the demon lord named Laplace for 100 years ago and feared across all the lands. Roxy says that she hates her hair color as it sometimes turns greenish in the wrong kind of light. Rudy comforts her by saying that he thinks her hair is beautiful. Roxy thanks him but says to save the comment for when he meets a person he likes. Rudy is quick with his words, saying that he likes Roxy, to which she replies to try again in 10 years. At the end of the lesson, Rudy tries to catch her changing, but unfortunately, Roxy knows and shoos him away. After a year of training, Rudy is able to cast advanced magic spells without depleting a lot of mana. Meanwhile, Paul trains him in swordsmanship, but much to his disappointment, Rudy is slow in his progress. On his 5th birthday, Rudy receives a wand from Roxy. He is disappointed, however, when Roxy says that teachers give their students a wand when they are ready to graduate. He wants her to stay and teach him more, but Roxy states that there is nothing more that she has to offer, as he has already grown to become a better mage than her. Rudy is heartbroken when Roxy says that tomorrow will be his final lesson. He is also hesitant when Roxy says they will travel away from town. It is then we see flashbacks of his previous life, when he developed agoraphobia. As a fat loser with no friends, he was an outcast and a victim of bullying, subsequently developing an intense fear of being around strangers. However, Roxy forces him to face his fear head-on, cradling him as they head out. Roxy comforts him by saying that she is right by his side. As they head across town, Rudy sees all the good people exchanging kind words with Roxy, realizing that the bullies of old have been left behind. Away from the town now, Roxy demonstrates the spell she would like for him to learn.
Now come, O rain! Sweep all else away! Cumulonimbus!
Covered in a dark, ominous cloud, Roxy creates a thundercloud and causes torrential rain to pour down with lightning strikes. Inspired and awed by all that Roxy has taught him, Rudy joyfully chants the words and summons an immense cloud that is a sight to behold.
Cumulonimbus! Look at that!
After teaching her best spell, Roxy acknowledges Rudy was able to learn all that she has mastered in a lifetime. Both proud and inspired by her pupil, Roxy decides to set out on a journey to travel the world and hone her own abilities as a mage. Before she leaves, she congratulates him for successfully graduating 4 levels to become a Saint class mage in just 2 years. Roxy gives him one last gift to commemorate his success. Unknowingly to her, Rudy has already taken it upon himself to never forget her. As Rudy prays to his new favorite possession every morning, Paul is seen copping a feel on his wife's bottom. Now able to venture out of his home, Rudy takes a pleasant stroll around town when he sees 3 kids throwing rocks at a hooded child. He immediately sprints towards them and throws water at one of the kids' face. After missing a couple of shots, the bullies decide to leave. Rudy asks if he is okay and is surprised to see that he is a handsome fellow. Rudy introduces himself and the child says his name is Sylphie. Over the next 6 months, Rudy teaches him magic and is surprised how capable Sylphie is as a mage. After getting soaked in the rain, the two head back to Rudy's place. Rudy brings Sylphie up to his room so they can take a bath. Rudy casually takes off his clothes and asks why Sylphie isn't doing the same. Impatient, Rudy grabs Sylphie's clothes, but he begins to resist. He eventually forces off the top and proceeds to take off the bottom, but is again faced with resistance. He thinks that Sylphie is just shy about showing his cucumber, but also doesn't want to be the only person with his cucumber out. So he tricks her. That's right. He finds that there was never a said cucumber behind the trouser. No, instead, it was a duck. He is shocked as this is the first time he has ever seen a duck in a place other than his computer monitor. He is overwhelmed with guilt and doesn't think she'll ever forgive him. Rudy asks Paul for advice, believing that wooing women is his area of expertise. Paul tells him to be honest with Sylphie and tell her how much he misses her. When he gets the chance, he opens himself up, and Sylphie takes it well, saying that she also wishes that they were able to hang out like before. Happy that they made up, Paul joins the two, but wonders if it's a good thing that his son is becoming more like his dad. The next episode begins with the most joyous of occasions. Zenith announces that she is pregnant. The families celebrate together, until suddenly, Lilia also announces that she is pregnant.
Forgive me, Zenith. That child's it's probably mine.
Devastated, Zenith sits down with Lilia to have a one-on-one conversation. As they sit together, Zenith asks Lilia what she will do. Lilia responds that after she helps with Zenith's childbirth, she will raise her own back at her hometown. Zenith knows Lilia's home is a month's ride south, making it impossible for her or the baby to survive the trip. As there is nowhere else for her to go, Lilia says she has no other option. When Paul tries to put in a word, Zenith tells him to shut the front door. Rightfully so, Zenith is conflicted. Even with what happened, how can she send someone to her death, let alone a newborn child? Rudy also doesn't want to lose Lilia as he notes everything that she has done for him. She gets him towels when he's training, sets up baths after being stuck out in the rain, and she even hides his perverted tendencies like stealing Roxy's panties and staring at her gigantic watermelons. And so, Rudy decides to speak. He makes up a lie, saying that he heard Paul force it upon Lelia to do the hump-diddy-dump, and that none of this is Lelia's fault. He said that he saw Paul go into Lelia's room and tell her to spread her legs if she doesn't want anyone to find out. Paul tries to defend himself, but is shut down once again by Zenith. Rudy drives the point home, saying that Lelia should not get in trouble for something she couldn't control. Unable to fight the plea of her one and only son, Zenith gives into her conscience, allowing Lelia to raise her child in their home. Paul is relieved and Lelia is overcome with tears. The next day, we hear Lelia's perspective. She doesn't believe she should have been spared. Hearing the plot development made by Paul and Zenith every night, Lelia, a grown woman in a house with no other men, gave into her desires and seduced Paul. Lelia believes she should have been punished for her betrayal, but nonetheless is thankful to Rudy for saving her life. She admits that she was frightened of Rudy, believing that he was possessed by a demon, as he would always stare at her watermelons with a perverted grin ever since he stepped out of his mother's womb. But because he saved her life, Lelia says that she will commit to raising her child to serve Rudy the way she serves Paul and Zenith. A while later, Norn and Aisha are born. As she is now much more open to talking to Rudy, Lelia tells him stories of Paul and what he was like before he married Zenith. She told him that when she was a virgin, Paul once tried to make her a cucumber salad while she was sleeping, confirming Rudy's impression that Paul is scum. Still, Rudy acknowledges Paul's skills as a swordsman, having mastered the three main sword techniques of this world: Sword God, Water God, and North God. Paul taunts Rudy as they train, saying that Rudy's swordplay has stagnated. Paul proudly asks if Rudy wants to be a cool guy like his dad, to which Rudy responds that he doesn't want to be a guy that cheats on his wife. Rudy tells Paul to keep his hands off any other girl if he doesn't want to hear the low blow comment from his son, to which Paul whispers and asks if he means any other girl besides Zenith and Lelia, or just Zenith. Paul knows that his son is just as horny as he is, bringing Sylphie into the matter. Rudy admits this fact. Even though his father is scum, he admits they both speak the same language. Later, while seeing Sylphie advance her magic skills, Rudy contemplates the idea of school. During their tutoring sessions, Roxy mentioned a school called Renoa University. As the world's largest magic school, Roxy believed that Rudy should continue his magical studies there. Lately, Rudy has been feeling like he hasn't been improving, understanding that this small village he calls home can't offer him anything more. As he shares his thoughts, Sylphie begins to burst into tears, telling Rudy that she doesn't want him to leave her. He comforts her, telling her that he will never do such a thing. After his interaction with Sylphie, Rudy fantasizes about spending a life with her, developing his plot while calling out her name. When Paul catches him in the act, he tells Rudy that he received a letter from Roxy. In the letter, Roxy notes that she is now at the royal capital of the Chiron Kingdom, tutoring the 7th prince in the city. She adds that he is not as talented as a mage, but just as horny as Rudy, stealing her panties and developing plot whenever he gets the chance. She also mentions that she is now a king class mage, which is one step above saint class. Given the growth she has seen in him, Roxy also wrote that she estimates that by now, Rudy would have probably hit Emperor class. Facing the reality of the situation, Rudy again has the urge to attend school. The next day, Rudy asks Paul if he can request an unreasonable favor, to which Paul immediately replies saying he may not. After both Lelia and Zenith kick him in the shin, Zenith responds by saying that he can ask for whatever he wants. Rudy wants to attend Renoa, but he tells them about Sylphie's crying plea, to which Paul takes the credit for teaching his son to be a lady killer. Rudy hopes for Paul to pay for both his and Sylphie's tuition so they can attend Renoa together. When Paul says that they don't have that kind of money, Rudy says he understands, but instead asks Paul to get him a job so that he can earn enough to pay for Sylphie himself. Although Paul doesn't think it's right for Rudy to give Sylphie a free pass on life like that, he reluctantly agrees. Several days later, we meet Ghislaine, a former member of Paul's harem and a badass beast woman with a huge rack. She is here to pick up Rudy as they will head out to his new job. Paul intentionally found a job for him away from this town so that Sylphie and Rudy can spend some time apart. He believes it is in both of their interests, as Sylphie's dependence on Rudy is unhealthy for them in the long run. After Lilia and Zenith say their goodbyes, Paul says his with a final sparring match. Rudy puts up a good fight, but Paul eventually knocks him out. When he wakes up, Rudy is being carted off with Ghislaine, wondering where his next destination will be. When Rudy wakes up, Ghislaine hands him a letter written by Paul. He tells Rudy that he'll be tutoring math and magic to a noble woman in the city of Roa. In exchange for continuing his sword training, Paul notes that he'll also be tutoring Ghislaine. He assures Rudy that Ghislaine is the best there is, admitting that the only fights he has ever won against her was the one in the bedroom. He also tells him to feel free making moves on the noble woman he'll be teaching, but to keep his hands off Ghislaine, prompting her to tell Rudy to send that letter to Zenith. When he gets to the manor, Rudy checks out the hot beast servants, thinking that his employers have good taste in women. Philip enters and introduces himself as a gray rat and the cousin of Rudy's father, while Rudy is surprised that his family name carries nobility. Before he is hired, Philip mentions that he needs to get the blessing of his daughter, whom he'll be teaching. When he meets her, Rudy feels the intensity emanating from Eris. She immediately hates Rudy because he is younger than her, on top of the fact that math and magic are her least favorite topics to learn. When Rudy argues that his age isn't relevant, Eris slaps him and asks if he knows who he's talking to. Rudy has balls bigger than any 7-year-old you know, as he slaps her back. But big balls don't help him here as Eris rips him a new hole.
Wait, please! Get back here, scum! I'm going to pulverize you!
Later, Philip and Rudy reconvene, and Philip is surprised when Rudy says he won't quit winning her approval, since all the other tutors he tried to hire quit by this point. Rudy suggests a plan to convince Eris that magic is useful to learn.
All right, in that case, here's what I need you to do.
During the night, the plan is in effect. Rudy and Eris have been kidnapped, all part of Rudy's grand plan to show his power when he saves the day using magic. Eris wakes up and rages as she starts banging on the door when a large man enters. Happy that they chose such a convincing-looking actor, Rudy winks at the man like he has Tourette syndrome. The man begins to go at Eris and goes at her some more as he clobbers her face. Rudy is a bit shocked at the realistic performance, but when the man swings, Rudy gives him another 2 winks, causing the man to think he's a disabled person as he walks away. After healing her, Rudy tells Eris he's escaping through the window. Eris demands Rudy to take her with him. He tells her that he will only if she stops hitting him and obeys his instructions. Despite putting up a front, Eris is now scared after taking a beating and begins to listen to Rudy's words. When they get back into town, the pair see the man from the manor. The two let their guard down, when suddenly, a hooded figure snatches Eris. Rudy follows and blocks the kidnapper's way. When Rudy asks them to release Eris, the man from the manor says that they can't as they need to sell Eris to get very rich. Rudy understands now that this isn't a game. The kidnappers offer Rudy 100 gold coins to walk away, enough to pay 10x the tuition for Renoa University with change left over. Rudy says the offer is tempting, but that there are more things to life than money.
Money can't buy waifus!
Ghislaine has been alerted.
Damn it!
Rudy manages to grab a hold of Eris, but is helpless as the sword throw catches him off guard. Rudy is frozen. It is the first time he has witnessed a death in this world. He knew at this point that the kidnappers were real, but it didn't hit home until he saw a man slaughtered in front of his face. Up until now, Rudy treated this new life as a game, but realized in this very moment that he may not be as lucky to get another chance at life this time around. Rudy also thinks he failed as Eris storms away. It was his fault that Philip's daughter was put into this mess of a situation, and without Ghislaine, Rudy knew that both he and Eris wouldn't have made it back. But to his surprise, Eris tells Rudy to stay as her teacher. Eris doesn't give an explanation, but Rudy is just happy that he did enough to get her blessing. The next day, Rudy meets Hilda, Philip's wife, and to no one's surprise, Rudy checks out her character development. Rudy meets Soros, father to Philip and the head of the Boreas Grey Rat household. Soros is a strict and boisterous man that tends to speak his mind out loud. He thanks Rudy for saving his granddaughter and instructs Eris to request Rudy politely to be her tutor. Eris is reluctant, but obeys him as Soros is not the type to take her bickering.
Won't you please teach Eris how to do magic? Meow! Huh?
The butler explains to the confused Rudy that the Boreas household is very fond of beast people, explaining that the pose is meant to emulate their ears. Over the next several days, Rudy finds that Eris and Ghislaine are studious in their magic lessons, but is troubled by Eris's lack of effort in mathematics. She occasionally runs away from them, and Rudy is left to chase after her. When he finds her sleeping on a haystack, Rudy tells Eris to wake up if she doesn't want him to develop plot. She doesn't respond, so Rudy goes for it. As he measures out her character development, Rudy sees the potential for her to mature into a beautiful woman, thinking that she'll one day grow to be Annie Cup. After a tasty appetizer, Rudy goes for the main course. Rudy and Eris also train to master the sword under Ghislaine, and it becomes quickly apparent that Eris is much more capable in the art of the sword, while Rudy continues to struggle. In town, Rudy comes across a man who decides that it would be a good idea to sell an aphrodisiac to a 7-year-old. Fortunately for him, this 7-year-old is a pervert who takes interest in such things. Eris caught him staring at the item and decides to buy it for him as a present, unbeknownst to what it is. She thinks it's some sort of medicine, but when Rudy accidentally drops it, he slips and shouts, "Aphrodisiac," leading to his demise as he faces the wrath of the girls. The three spend 2 years training in their respective categories. Ghislaine compliments Eris for becoming advanced rank in the sword god style. Eris is a natural with the sword while Rudy continues to struggle. The girls make progress in magic, but Eris continues to resist with her studies. Meanwhile, Rudy also keeps up with his perverted hobbies, perfecting his sculptures of Roxy with precision and detail. He eventually sells it for 1 gold piece and finds out that the sculpture made its way to the prince, whom Roxy is teaching. Roxy notes in a letter to Rudy that the sculpture is shockingly accurate, highlighting the fact that it even has her moles in the right places. On his 10th birthday, Rudy receives a staff from Eris, who thanks him for everything he has done for her. At night, Philip sends her daughter into Rudy's room. Due to some political struggles within the Boreas and Nodo's Grey Rat families, Philip ploys to get Rudy and Eris married so that they can merge the two families. Rudy doesn't want to be a part of a family power struggle, but he can't resist when a pretty girl is in his bed. He tries to hold back, so he tells Eris that she should leave or else he'll do something dirty. Eris says she'll allow it, but just a little. He's surprised at her response, but he immediately goes for it since she verbally gave the green light. Rudy can't hold back as he warms up his fingers. He is about to develop plot when suddenly...
No! I said just a little!
Careful!
You idiot!
He begins to regret taking advantage of the situation even when he knew that her father forced her to take such action, but doesn't dwell for too long as he sees that Eris is still by the door. He tells her that he's sorry. She says she'll forgive him since it's his birthday and tells him to wait 5 years when they're old enough to develop plot. Rudy is ecstatic by her words and promises to himself that he'll hold off until then. The next day, Rudy, Eris, and Ghislaine set out to an open field so that Rudy can teach them his best spell, Cumulonimbus. In the sky, they see a strange and mysterious object that has been accumulating mana over time. All around the world, people begin to sense the mana pooling in that area. We meet Perugius, a high-ranking member of the Dragon Tribe, one of the 7 great heroes, who sealed away the demon god Laplace 500 years ago. He senses the mana anomaly and sends his servant to investigate the strange occurrence. We also meet Kissxsis, a member of the Demon Clan and daughter of the Demon God. Finally, we meet Stead, who holds the current title as the Dragon God, the strongest member of the Dragon Tribe. He also senses the mana pool and decides to head towards that direction. We step back to the group as Rudy is ready to chant the words to the spell, but he stops as he sees the ominous clouds begin to darken. Ghislaine uses her cover die to see that there's a concentration of mana when suddenly the group is attacked. Perigeus' servant thinks Rudy is the one who caused the mana pool, but Ghislaine swears by her ranking title as the Sword King that he's mistaken. He recognizes her title as a Sword King and decides to trust her words for the time being. When he leaves, the mana disturbance activates, shooting down a beam of light.
Lady Eris, Rudius!
Thanks for making it to the end. Please give this a like and make sure to subscribe. Have a great day and see you at the next video.